Right. So FIL Plus is like how can we incentivize useful data over not useful data? So let's define useful data. I don't know, the human genome, cancer research. Let's define not useful data. I don't know, like Kai's list of his favorite TV shows, right? Like, there's clearly a difference between these two different types of data. Now, in terms of Filecoin as a network, block rewards are given to, they're a function of how much you're actively storing, right? So if I'm storing 10 gigabytes, I have 10 times more chance at winning a block reward than somebody who's storing 1 gigabyte. And so what FIL Plus does is it's like a boost to your lottery ticket. It says if you are storing a gigabyte of useful data, then you have, I think it's 35 times. I can't remember. I heard somebody say it's getting put up to more than 10. But there's a multiplier on the likelihood of you winning block rewards if you're storing useful data. Now, the moment you hear that, as I did, I'm like, but who decides, right? And the answer is a human, because we haven't yet got generalized AI. So, like, there's notaries, which are entities that say, I have been bestowed the power to decide what useful data sets are useful and kind of bless those data sets in the form of awarding data cap to the storage miner that will store that data set, right? So what's data cap? It's a bit like a currency, like FIL is a currency. If you associate data cap with a storage deal, it gives you this boost in your lottery ticket, if we put all of that together, right? So how do I get it? A notary will award data cap to useful data sets, and you apply for it. You say, hey, I think this data set's useful. Can I please have the data cap to go with my deal so that I can get a... so, you know, from the person storing the data's perspective, it gives more incentive for miners to store that useful data. And obviously, from a miner's perspective, they're going to always prioritize FIL Plus deals over normal storage deals because it gives them more chance of winning the reward. So what we are trying to do is use that as an incentive for people to join the Bacalhau network to do compute. So we're trying to take that kind of storage incentive and say, what would it look like if somebody did compute over an existing FIL Plus CID? So, like, here is a useful data set for humanity. It's already been blessed. If I bring some useful compute to that data and output a derivative data set from the work I've done on it, chances are that the data set I produce is also useful, right? And so if we award data cap to the output of a compute job, the storage miner that stores that output as a deal is going to be incentivized to be the one that stores that on chain, that puts the deal on chain to prove that they're storing that locally. So if we think about a Bacalhau compute provider, they're kind of sat there doing the compute work, producing this data on their disk, and all of a sudden they're like, well, I've already kind of got the data. If somebody could give me the data cap for this, it means that I'm incentivized to produce the data in the first place. So it's kind of like using the storage reward in order to encourage people to compute to get to that data to get the reward. So, like, FIL Plus in another way is like a financial incentive to run compute. That's the theory, right? And we're going to use FIL Plus as a way of trying to get compute providers to join the network, operate on existing FIL Plus data sets, transform them in a useful way, produce derivative data sets, and be awarded that data cap boost in Filecoin rewards. So I'll just kind of walk through roughly how we plan on doing this, give a quick demo of our dashboard, and then, you know, hopefully we can find compute providers out there who want a boost in their rewards. So deals are being published to the Filecoin blockchain all the time. Deals that have been blessed is the word I used, but what we basically mean is a notary has said this is a useful data set. A human has given the green light, like, using the power invested in me, I bless this data set. And so the useful property of a blockchain is, of course, it's an immutable database throughout history. So, you know, the thing that we're doing is scanning the blockchain for blessed CIDs the whole time. And we're kind of caching those. So here's an example. Hey, look, a FIL plus CID just showed up in a deal, right? And we're noticing those in our moderator service, which is something that we'll run. It's a centralized service. It's not, it's not worry about BFT and like decentralization. We're just going to stand this up with a Postgres, scan the Filecoin blockchain for CIDs that have been blessed, and cache them. And as I said, we could get rid of that cache, and every single time we need to ask the question, is this CID blessed? We could scan the whole Filecoin blockchain again, but clearly that's inefficient, so let's just cache those CIDs, right? So that's all that slide is doing is, hey, we have a cache of all of the existing blessed CIDs. So we know if somebody rocks up with a job that consumes one of these CIDs, we could call it a candidate for a blessed job now, rather than just a blessed data set. So let's go to our user. This user's from the mid-90s, clearly, and he said, I'm going to do a job. And if we look at the CID that we're putting into that job, it's one of our blessed data sets, right? So we're determining that as long as they're not like cat dev null is my job, then I'm not doing useful work, right? So what we can't do here is say there's some automatic system of knowing that the work you're doing is useful. Again, there has to be a human in the loop until we've got some clever tech that I don't know about right now. So the point I'm making is what we can do is identify a job that's consuming an existing blessed CID, because from slide 1, we know all of the CIDs that are there. So this job comes into the requester node, broadcasts it out to the network. The compute nodes hear about this job. Now, one key question in a compute node is, should I run this job? Right? Because you're hearing about these things all the time. The people want you to do this, people want you to do that. And the question that we're trying to answer with this whole FIL plus story is like, why should I run this job? Right? It's like, put the word why before it, and it captures the real spirit of this whole thing. But at this moment, we heard about this new job, and we need to know, like, is it worth me doing this? So what the compute nodes will do is reach out to our moderator service. We have kind of pluggable systems for asking the question. Self-selection is what we call this. Like a compute node will hear about a new job on the network, and they'll ask themselves, is the data that I need to run this job local to me? What's the reputation of the person asking me to do this job? There's various functions involved in, like, will I take this job on and run it? In this use case, the compute node will ask our moderator service, hey, is this input set verified? As in, is this a FIL plus data set? Now, if the answer is yes, it's highly likely, if I know that, the history of the requester node, the reputation is looking good, and I'm going to gamble on running this job, and therefore I will be awarded FIL plus, right? So there's another path, which we won't look at in these diagrams, but like, I'm going to wait until a human has actually blessed this job before I'm going to run it. So let's go the optimistic route for a second. So I'm going to proactively run this because I reckon I'll be awarded the FIL plus if I do. So the compute nodes can ask our moderator service, like, hey, is this a blessed input data set, right? And the answer is yes. So the compute nodes say, hey, I'm going to run this job. Now, everything about that flow is how Bacalhau works today. The only difference is the self-selection step is asking our moderator service, is this blessed CID? So the next thing is the job runs. So the compute node is going to run our incredibly useful Docker container that's going to produce some amazing new data for us. Oh, hang on. Oh, no. What have I done? Oh, hello. OK, sorry. I've completely just rumbled the order of that whole thing. There we go. That's where we are. Cool. Right, hang on then. And it's going to ask the thing, and then you're going to go yes, and then you're going to run the job, and then here we go. Right. Oh, no. Kai fails at basic computing. OK, here we go. We'll go again. OK, cool. Don't press up or down is what I'm learning. OK, so the compute node comes along, runs the job. Now we have some results, right? We've transformed the data somehow. So we kind of have a candidate for a FIL plus CID at this point. But we don't know for sure because the job literally might have been garbage. Like, again, we can't tell. So we have to have a moderation step. whatever happens, as Bacalhau does today, we're going to write the result to IPFS, so whatever the compute job was, so at least we can see the results. The moderator service will also notice that this job has run and produce this output. So at this point, we have, alongside our cache of verified input data sets, we also now have our cache of job results. It says verified there. That's actually a bit confusing because we've not yet verified them, but we're kind of keeping a log of all of the jobs. Yeah, okay. Here's a list of all of the jobs that have consumed verified inputs, is what the moderator service is keeping track of there, right? So it's like, hey, here's a list of stuff that could be blessed as a useful compute job over data. So at this point, we have the Bacalhau moderator. This is a human. It's going to be part of our team. We are a trusted entity in this loop, right? It's like, look, we are going to identify compute jobs that are not trying to mess around and are in some way useful. Let's define useful. Good question. Maybe we need to write up a code of conduct for like Bacalhau moderators and how they'll decide. But at this point, I think we could say, as long as you're doing something useful and not just trying to get the FIL plus nefariously, we could say that looks like a useful job, therefore. So the Bacalhau moderator will log into our dashboard, which has got this kind of history of everything that's happened, look at all of the details of that job. What's the image? What profile happened? What happened with all of the events back and forth with the requester node? What are the actual data that was produced out of that job? And come to a decision. The moment that's answered, the moderator is going to be looking at all of these details of this job and come to the conclusion, yeah, I think that job was useful. That wasn't a waste of time. So record in our moderator service, this job is a blessed job now, meaning that the results that it's produced are a blessed CID. Now, at this moment, that's not awarding data cap. To be clear, Bacalhau as a team and our moderators are not notaries at this moment. We could be. We'll get to that down the road. The next step of this whole thing is to actually push a Filecoin deal out onto the network with data cap associated with that deal. How do we do that? Well, we have our compute node with Lotus local to the data we just produced. We're the ones that just ran this job, right? So we've just spat this data out on our local disk. We have this CID that we've produced. And now we're going to speak to a deal engine. And so to begin with, Bacalhau is not going to be a team of notaries. Evergreen is a notary. It has the ability to arbitrarily award data cap as it sees fit. So we're going to integrate with Evergreen in order to get deals pushed out to Filecoin with the data cap associated. How does Evergreen know which CIDs it will give data cap to? Well, it can ask our moderator service because that's the link, and that's a trusted link. This arrow pointing here between Evergreen and our moderator service will be an integration we'll just build, like as in Evergreen will trust the Bacalhau moderation service, and both of those are centralized services, right? It's Evergreen's deal engine and our moderation service it's a private connection with an API key. So the moment Evergreen says, hey, look, there's this deal coming in, do I bless this CID? It's going to ask the Bacalhau system, is this CID one that you've just produced and has it been moderated? And we would say, yes, that is a useful data set for humanity. Please give it data cap. Out of that process comes a verified storage deal, right? And that goes back to the miner with the data cap awarded. The detail of that is the miner's Lotus wallet address is allocated the data cap for it then to push the deal out to the network. At which point, that's the end of the flow, at which point the compute node says, well, that was worth me doing because now I have a boost in lottery tickets and I've helped humanity along the way. So the quick demo of this, if I'm completely honest with you, it's more of a demo of our dashboard than it is a demo of the end-to-end flow that we've just done. But here's our dashboard. Yay. It's really cool. Well, I mean, if ever there was a slight linger to see if there was going to be an applause, it was then. Here's the network tab. So basically, this is like, this is running, to be clear, on my laptop. So this is it's a 3-node network. It's all right in front of me. An overview of the resources available for people running jobs. This is, Luke showed you a little diagram earlier of the nodes interconnecting, and like this will grow in its scope. At the moment, there's a whole set of APIs that tell us like which jobs are running on which nodes. So this kind of screen is just an overview for both compute providers to see who else is out there on the network, and for people running jobs to see like what kind of resources is there on the network for me to run jobs on. Useful stuff. The really important part of what we're looking at in terms of a moderator logging in is this jobs list, right? So, we'll probably have some kind of notification system saying, hey, moderator, a job's just arrived that's consuming a FIL+ input data set. So could you please go and check it out? So I'd log in as the moderator. I'd come, oh, yeah, look, there's this new job that I just got pinged about. Let's come in here. And boom, we've got all of the data we need in the world about this job. So I'm like, oh, right, I can see that the input data set, this is the little FIL+ logo, by the way, that has already been blessed. Like this job is doing some transformation over a blessed data set. So let's look at the job. Let's see if it's actually useful, right? So we're looking down here. We're going, OK, yep, I can see. Oh, it's incredibly useful. It's catting a file. I think that's useful for the purpose of this demo. We can see down here all of the other details, right? Down here, we can see exactly what happened with the network, like which nodes interacted with this job in the following way. We can dig down into the details of each event, et cetera, et cetera. Like, I can't overstate, like, let's just throw the most amount of information that we have on this screen and let the human decide, because there's no magic sauce. There's no kind of, hey, we've got an algorithm to know if a container is a useful container or not. That's just not what we're doing. So if I'm the moderator, by the way, this will be public dashboard, right? Apart from this part, because I'm the moderator, so I'm going to log in, and I'm going to... I hate typing on a stage. It just like all goes wrong every time. Okay, here we go. All that work. There you go, I'm logged in. And there we go. We get this little button down here. So are you sure you want to do this? Because like now you're kind of in God mode as far as the Bacalhau moderator is concerned. So I'm like, yes, don't worry. I've checked it. It's all good. I want this to have data cap. So, we get a little visual confirmation. Right, this job is now in FIL+ territory. Our centralized, and it's important I keep using that word, our centralized database has kept a record now of the output CIDs of this job, i.e. these things down here, having been moderated by us. So if we come back to this whole world of where we're actually going to push the job out, so we come here, and it's this moment where Evergreen then, the compute node that produced the results would push a deal to Evergreen. Evergreen would say, oh, but do I award this CID with data cap or not? And it's going to ask our moderation service, which was a result of me having just logged in and said, yes, I believe this job was useful. And FIL+ is awarded to the compute provider. And that's it. There's the flow. I mean, I think one caveat to make on this going forwards is there's a stage clearly where we might well be the notary and not need Evergreen in the mix in order to achieve that. This current flow is us saving time. I spoke with Deep, who's working on Evergreen, and he said, look, let's get you guys set up such that you can just get storage providers to get the data cap, to encourage them to join the network, and the moment at which that integration is becoming more hassle than it's helping you, then we can get you guys, as in the Bacalhau team, to become notaries themselves, and at which point we will be able to directly award the data cap from the result of the moderator clicking the button. But for the moment, we're going to go via Evergreen to get that done. And yeah, just to conclude with like, what's the point? It's to try and give compute providers an incentive to join the network, to be blunt, and to do that in a financial way that doesn't involve all of the hard stuff that Luke just put on his slides, because that stuff will take some time, and we do want to poke that stuff and find the holes in it before we kind of roll anything out in terms of token. So what else can we do? And this is a parallel, useful way in which to incentivize compute providers. So yeah, I'm gonna stop there and hand over to, I think, Simon next. Unless a quick question in the back, maybe, if we have time.
Can you talk a little bit about how you are making those decisions as to like what constitutes a useful deal? Because if we have people making the decision, then, you know, I or you or whoever is the arbiter of what is good, and what does that look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm going to be completely honest and put my hands up and say I have no idea what mechanisms we're going to use to decide whether something's useful. I think what we can do is look at the same sorts of decisions that existing notaries are making over whether a data set is useful or not, and apply those same concepts to a compute job. But I don't think, I think in my mind at the moment, I'm kind of building a box in which to insert the answer to your question. Because it's, if I was to wave my hands and go, I think this, I'm kind of actually falling foul of the point that you're making, which is I'm just having a subjective opinion. But I think clearly to sign that off with, it needs to be a human with an opinion at this stage to decide, and probably some of the decisions will be wrong. And I think that's okay. Because if we look at the kind of the bigger picture of are we doing a good job or not, and I think let's find out and tweak those rules and be transparent with that, I think would be the best we can do.
To be clear, there are already humans making those decisions today. That's what the notaries are. It's already a council. It's not a single person, and we're just going to inherit those. I see no reason that we would differentiate from that for any point in the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
Just a small comment. So if data or compute jobs come to your network through a DeSci node, then I think in the future this could potentially be a shortcut for you to verify that this is a FIL Plus deal, because we have a very, very strong incentive to make sure that our platform is not going to be spammed by non-scientific content and non-scientific data.
Yep. Yeah, I totally agree. And in the same way that our service and Evergreen will have a trust relationship, Evergreen will just trust our moderators to know that the decisions we've made will end up with a verified deal. We can equally delegate that trust to other sources of jobs coming in. I think that's a very reasonable statement to make. And just back to the first point there, like the mechanisms in which we decide if something is worthy is a very fluid, open question. Because I think it's a very important point. Like, if I heard about that, oh, there's this committee somewhere that's a sort of buried in the basement deciding about the future of, the humanities data, I kind of want to know who's on the committee and how are they making decisions. So it's important we're very transparent about that. But yeah, I think trust relationships are okay, and clearly the notary system is a good example of that, and that's how FIL Plus works today. So I think we're just trying to take that and extend it a little bit into compute. Yeah.
If the outputs would have possibility to be reused, then you can judge on the importance of a job if the outputs are going to be reused by somebody else. So this is continuation. Like I described it.
Yeah, I mean that's a great point. So like just to check, I understand you. Like, if the inputs have already been blessed, and then we're going to do some transformation on those inputs, produce the outputs, that output then is blessed because we decided the transformation was useful, and then the output is now a FIL Plus deal, right? And so that could be the input of another job, and we keep repeating the cycle.
I would say you can have perfect reasoning without this blessing, just judging on the fact that somebody is using that asset. So if more people are using that for the ecosystem, it means that it is relevant.
Yep.
You don't have to have any judge here.
Yeah, possibly. I think the thing that keeps blocking me is immediately I'm like, cool, so I'm just going to cat dev null the whole time and earn rewards. So I think there's going to be ways to, how to get around people always attempting to gain financially without doing the work is where it all comes down to needing to judge the job. But certainly, if there's ways that we can skip that, awesome, because that just makes the whole thing more efficient. But I think at the moment in my head it needs to be a human, in the same reason as notaries exist in FIL Plus. I don't think they've worked out a way to say we can just tell by the number of people using this data set that the data set is useful, because the moment you put that out there, people go, well, I use the data set as well, and therefore I deserve a reward. So. Right. Yeah. Yes, I suppose this whole system is a way of trying to incentivize people without a mechanism for payment.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so it's a chicken and egg problem. So it is a bit of a stopgap. I mean, clearly we're trying to find a way to incentivize compute providers without a token. And when we have a token, everything you've just said becomes much easier. Question just there.
The development on Bacalhau has been insane to watch. You guys are doing amazing work. And I think the issues that we're talking about right now are issues that have solutions, like who chooses a notary, and there's like webs of trust you can build out and sort of pools of randomized selected notaries. I have a comment kind of on adoption, though. So when you're talking about getting compute providers through FIL Plus or through some sort of incentivization mechanism, are you talking about professional compute providers with data centers, or like me with my phone or my laptop and my PC?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I think at this point, all of those.
Okay, so.
With probably a bias towards the professional.
I mean, preferably, yeah.
Okay.
Just because the capacity is larger.
It's
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah.
So some experience from Boink, where there's two. So a way to get a lot of me is to get a viral project going.
Mm-hmm.
So there have been two that I'm familiar with in the system. The first is, of course, SETI at Home, where they're just like, hey, let's find aliens. And everyone was like, that sounds really fun.
So it's the use case that incentivizes them rather than the financials. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
And the other one is very recent. I think it's 2 or 3 years old. It's Minecraft at Home. And they essentially tried to hack Minecraft in funny ways, like find the tallest cactus and find the loading screen seed.
Yeah.
And when they launched, they got tens of millions of YouTube views. They got, like, their project is over because they just did everything really, really quickly. So I think there's something to be said about just finding something that's kind of funny and useful, and just putting it on the network and putting it out to the public and see if they want to come in.
No,
There's a lot of public
you're
data
totally
out
right.
there.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting idea. So what you're saying is there's other forms of incentivization as well, and
Yeah,
they
there's-
don't have to necessarily have a financial component to them.
Absolutely. It's like
Yeah.
a supply and demand curve. One is just like how interested am I in the project, and one is how much am I getting paid. And at some point, you're going to be more interested than the money, so you'll do it anyway.
Yeah, spot on. And I'd love to see a world. Well, I think when I was discussing at lunch, like I'd be interested to see the composition of Bacalhau over time between the volunteer network and the incentivized network.
Yes.
And it would be great to see like everyone's going, oh, amazing, I'll help cure cancer or something as the incentive, as opposed to like, oh, how much do I earn out of it? Otherwise, I don't want to bother.
Yeah, and as those develop, those metrics might be able to come into what is valuable data, what's valuable science, who's trying to get what data on a volunteer side, what do data centers think, and then the problem that everyone's trying to solve, it's a complex problem, and as we build out the data behind these platforms, we're probably going to be able to solve it with itself.
Yep.
It'll be very fun to watch.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's freaking like less than a year, and you got AI-generated cheese. Like, it's great.
That was the demo of the year.
So to be clear, I totally get it. I want to be very, very clear. Like, this is not our program. We are just inheriting what is already getting a lot of traction in the Filecoin world. We don't want centralization. We're very decentralized. We want this to be community decisions in every possible way. That said, it's already out there. People are already doing it. When anyone says this is good data, that is not us making that decision. That is a broad spectrum of people. That is not a centralized decision. If you'd like to bring up how to change that process, there's an entire team working on that. We are simply inheriting from that. It's just that we, with Bacalhau, now give storage providers a way to up-level and somewhat get rewarded for running compute jobs. Does that make sense? So like, if you run a job on a verified deal, you are more likely, not guaranteed, because as you saw, you have to go and click a button in order for the deal to actually be verified, but you are more likely to win a verified deal. You're the first person to be able to store it, and that gives you 10x QAP.
It makes sense. It's a simple implementation. Just
Absolutely.
get it going and then
Absolutely.
grow it from there.
Just to get going.
Yep.
Please, if you do have problems with the overall, this is good data, happy to listen to those, but make sure the people who are actually implementing that in the room.
Is there like a Google Doc, like in your presentation, where people can go and put comments, or how do we leave feedback?
On this, you want to talk to that team.
Okay.
We are not involved in that team. They are the ones who set that.
Awesome. Thank you.